Right out of the gate, I need to state the following. Ratchet and Clank is furry hentai. 1 out of 7. Relax, I'm kidding. The Ratchet and Clank series has always been a symbol of quality for Sony's consoles. Short of a couple exceptions on PS3, of course. Perhaps its biggest success was during the PS3 era with the Ratchet and Clank Future Trilogy, beginning with Tools of Destruction and ending with Into the Nexus. The second entry, A Crack in Time, being the best of the three, and the final entry being the worst, as its length was greatly reduced and its frame rate was cut in half shortly after Insomniac's president stated in an interview that 60 frames per second wasn't necessary for console games. We didn't see the duo again until 2016 with the remake of the original game on PS4, which was tied to the release of the Ratchet & Clank movie, which was little more than cutscenes of the game expanded to full length. The remake was really well done, don't get me wrong, but even on PS4 Pro it was still running at sub 60 frames per second, which seemed to indicate that Price was sticking to his guns. But now, we're on to the PS5, baby. It's a different ballgame entirely, and Ted has apparently changed his mind on whether or not smooth frame rates matter to gamers. So here comes Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, releasing the summer after PS5 came out, and was arguably the most graphically impressive PS5 exclusive release of its first year on the market. And I'll tell you what, it lives up to that reputation. The graphics are gorgeous, and while we still haven't quite reached the games that look like Pixar movies boast made by a Sony executive about the PS2 way back in 2000.
Bullshit.
This game comes so damn close to it, especially in quality mode, that only those willing to freeze frame the game and zoom in, looking at every little polygon and texture map will notice, so for most, the promise has finally been kept. 21 years later, but kept nonetheless.
It's about damn time!
The game does an exemplary job of showing off what the PS5 is capable of, particularly in what SSDs can do for console gaming. The plot centers around hopping from one dimension to the next. Weird how so much stuff is following that storyline these days, with Ratchet sometimes hopping almost instantaneously from one map to the other. Not the small rifts, mind you, where it's essentially just a different section of the map made to look different and disconnected. No, that's an effect that's been done for years, and was also used in Psychonauts 2, but the scenes where 1 minute you're sliding down a building, the next second you're on the back of a dragon, the next you're on a whole other planet entirely, with perhaps 1 second of loading between, that is a game changer to behold, and it gets me excited to see what other gameplay changes aside from super fast load times potentially could come from it. The music, as always, is so well done. It definitely has a cinematic flair and gives the whole I'm playing a live CG animated movie vibe a strong kick in the shorts. The voice acting, as always, is stellar. The Ratchet & Clank sense of humor shines in every performance. The sound effects make good use of PS5's 3D audio capabilities if you have the hardware to support it, but even on a standard stereo setup, it all still sounds great. Gameplay-wise, what can I say really? It's Ratchet & Clank. This is a fine-tuned formula they've been doing for years now, albeit with a few new bells and whistles. You have your trusty weapon wheel with a wide assortment of wacky guns you can buy and level up, but you also can now flit about in little mini rifts throughout levels using the Dimensionator effect, which instantly transports you from one part of the map to the other. You can use this to your advantage throughout the game to get the drop on enemies during gunfights, and in some cases you must do things in one-dimensional version of the map to make progress in the main version of the map, using these large crystals that provide the same power as the Dimensionator, but on a larger scale. If there's anything negative I can say about the gameplay, it's that for all the things you can do, it doesn't feel quite as big as the previous entries, especially when compared to A Crack in Time. I platted the game in about 10 hours, I think, maybe a little less. The hover boot racing challenges are gone, the battle arena feels like it has fewer levels than previous entries, and they're a lot less challenging, and the Clank puzzle levels, yeah, those are back too, don't feel as brain-warping as the ones in A Crack in Time either.
My brain hurts!
Gold bolts are still there to find, but they don't seem to be as important as they were in previous entries. There is still a challenge mode, unlocked when you complete the campaign, but I honestly didn't have a need to play it, as by the time I got to the end of my first run, I had already platted the game. Gameplay-wise, my biggest complaint is concerning the new Rhino weapon. Yes, just like in previous entries, there is a Rhino weapon you can unlock once you find enough things to construct it. For those of you new to the series, Rhino is short for Rip You a New One, and is a special weapon you unlock by collecting various other items throughout the game, and is usually considered the most powerful gun in the game. Every main entry in the series has a new Rhino weapon. The Rhino 2, the Rhino 3, the Rhino 4, etc. And they all act differently and have different function. In Rift Apart, the newest Rhino that you're gunning for is the Rhino 8. The Rhino 8 is flashy, but I'm not gonna lie, it kinda sucks. You aim it at an enemy, and it opens a dimensional rift above where you're aiming and dumps a bunch of items from other dimensions onto the character, with some of the items that it dumps being random objects referencing other Sony games, so keep an eye out when you use it. This is where you're going to see most of the cameos. But because of the random nature of the weapon, it can either do massive damage, or most of the stuff that falls from the rift can miss everything you're aiming at, making the gun a 50-50 shot at being completely useless every time you fire it. This isn't a big deal for newer players, because you can beat the game without ever having the Rhino. The standard weapons you can buy at the shop are more than enough to take out the biggest challenges in the game. Regardless, it's a sticking point for me because I've loved the Rhinos of the past, especially the Rhino 5. To this day, I insist that the best Rhino in the whole series was the Rhino 5 from A Crack in Time, with scores of bullets and rockets simultaneously pummeling enemies all around you while the 1812 Overture plays every time you squeeze the trigger. It's hilarious and incredibly fun. If more Ratchet & Clank games are made, I'd like there to be an option to select any Rhino you want from the previous entries as your reward for finding all these doohickeys, as I would pick the Rhino 5 every time. Which brings us to the plot. The writing is great, of course, though the last couple of entries don't seem to have near as much adult innuendo as they used to have, but overall it left me a tad perplexed. Ratchet and Clank are celebrated as the heroes of the galaxy in a big ceremony at the beginning of the game. Clank honors Ratchet with a gift, the Dimensionator, which will allow Ratchet to travel to other universes and dimensions to find other Lombaxes. But of course, Dr. Nefarious shows up, steals the Dimensionator, and that's how we eventually meet up with Ratchet's parallel dimension female counterpart, Rivet.
If you want to keep your beer cool, stick it between his legs.
Rivet is a great addition to the cast, I might add. But that's also the part that puzzles me. I have completed every main Ratchet & Clank game since the first, and while I don't by any means consider myself a die-hard superfan of Ratchet & Clank lore, I feel I have a decent grasp of it all. The game makes a big deal about Ratchet meeting Rivet, another Lombax, as though he's never seen another of his kind before. But he totally has. The final boss of A Crack in Time is a Lombax warrior that's gone off the rails. This and a few other things had me wondering throughout the story if this game takes place in the original timeline, or if this was meant to be a sequel to the 2016 remake of the first game, and everything that happened in all the other previous mainline entries has been retconned out. I'm honestly not up enough on my lore to say for sure. Most of the legacy characters I noticed making cameos here were all characters from the first game, which added to my speculation. Bottom line, while not feeling quite as big as A Crack in Time was, Ratchet & Clank is a must-own for PS5 owners. The gameplay is fun and addictive, its challenge mode gives you a new game plus to keep you coming back for more, the story is fun, exciting, and funny, and it is still one of the best-looking games released this generation. But it's still furry hentai. 6 out of 7.